Welcome back to Off Ball Takes. This is your host, Yarby Laws, and these are my co-hosts.
Khristopher Wells.
Top notch.
We appreciate all the support on our recent content, and before we do get started, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and follow us on Instagram and TikTok at the OBT Podcast for more content and updates.
Yes, so we're recording this as some of these cup games are going on before Thanksgiving, and we got some matchups that we got to talk about. So we'll start off with the Houston Rockets and the Denver Nuggets earlier in the week. This was a prime matchup between two teams that have both been playing very well over the course of the season. One of those matchups where you kind of want to take a look and see how these two teams stack up against one another, right? We know that going into the season, the Nuggets, along with Houston, of course, Oklahoma City as well, were looked at as the top teams in the Western Conference. And the Nuggets in this game, at least for now, right, kind of showed in that game, why they're still kind of a force to be reckoned with and some of the potential problems that Houston may have in the playoffs, right? So this was a game where kind of like the OKC one, right? Houston, they were down at one point, double digits in the third quarter, but they fought back, had a lead deep into the fourth quarter, and just could not, knock down enough shots, couldn't execute on the offensive end well enough to be able to close out the game, right? Durant and Şengün, they really struggled on the offensive end, right? They shot a combined 11 for 29 from the field. You did get contributions from some of the other guys, right? Amen Thompson at 22 and 7. Jabari Smith Jr. right at 21 and 11. Part of the defensive game plan was, we're going to take these other guys out. And we're going to make sure that if we lose, we're going to lose to these other guys beating us, right? Reed Shepherd off the bench, 27 points, 9 of 13. He's been playing great after a really slow start to the season. So, when you look at it from Houston's perspective, right, you played Denver and you played Oklahoma City. You did lose both, but they were both competitive games where you were right there, right? It wasn't like they got blown out. It wasn't like they were horrible. And they are still missing guys, right? Like now, in fairness, Denver, right, just like Oklahoma City, they were missing guys as well, right? Like in the case of Denver, they didn't have Christian Brown, who's already been out and is going to be out for a little while. Then Aaron Gordon got hurt in this game, and now he's going to be out for quite a while. We may not even see him until January, February, who knows? But I thought this was a huge game for both of these teams, right? And when you watch Denver on the offensive end, basically Jokic, Murray, two-man game, right? Murray was huge in the fourth quarter, right? Cam Johnson hit some big shots. Tim Hardaway Jr. hit some big shots. And for Houston, right, it was kind of more the same, where they're getting all the offensive rebounds, so they're getting a ton of extra opportunities to score, right? And that is their identity, right? They're big, they're physical, they're athletic, they're going to score around the basket. They can still hit threes, right? Because they shot 39% from three in this game, right? Jabari Smith was 5 of 11. Shepherd was 5 of 8. So, the process for most of the game was right there. They just weren't quite able to close it out. But if you're Houston, like I said, you were shorthanded. You'll have some guys come back. Tari Eason will be back at some point. I have no idea when Dorian Finney-Smith will be back. He has not played at all for Houston. I don't think they really know right now either, so he may not be back until January. Who knows? Obviously, they're without Fred VanVleet. And then, in the case for Denver, Peyton Watson defensively did a great job. The Nuggets defensively this season have been much better than they were last year, right? For most of last year, they were bottom 10 in the NBA in defense, right? This season, they are much better, right? If we look at their defensive rating, it has dropped, right? So it's dropped down to 11th. Right? Because earlier in the season, they were number 2. But also, there was some, kind of different stats with that because their net rating was much better. And now they're shorthanded. So they're probably going to have a lot more close competitive games. They're not going to look quite as good than they lost to the Sacramento Kings the next day. But what did you two think about this matchup, right? Because like I said, this was a really fun matchup where you got to see two powerhouses just kind of go at it. And, you got to see, at least for now, what it looks like. And I think you got to keep in mind regular season. We've seen this before where maybe a team wins the regular season matchup, but then in the playoffs, it's a different story. Never will recover from Phoenix, Minnesota. That one was a rough.
Yeah. This one stings for me. This is the team that I picked to win the NBA Finals, yet they cannot seem to really, get any wins against some real competition, right? Against teams that we know that they would have to kind of face and, ultimately end up beating to get to that end game goal of winning the NBA Finals, right? But in this game in particular, very similar story to the Oklahoma City one, like you said. I think KD came up short, especially in this game, obviously just like in the Oklahoma City game. But at this point, you're shooting 5 for 15. That's unacceptable in my opinion. You're the superstar, you're the leader of the team, and you came up short. Simple as that. Initially you could say that Reed Shepard was the problem early on in the season, but at this point, he's been actually hooping and balling out as a backup guard. Cool. We can't really blame it on, backup guard and guard play at this point. I think it's just more so cohesiveness, late game struggles, with KD, obviously, and then Şengün in this game also didn't show up either. So a combination of both of those guys just not really playing well, I think, is going to be the end game result of a game like this. But it was a 3-point game. There are other factors, from Denver's perspective, but I mainly wanted to focus on Houston's perspective because that is the team that I picked. So at the end of the day, I just really need more superstar play, and I need to see them actually, win against some bump.
The difference that I've seen from this game is that Şengün is nowhere near Jokic. Nowhere near Jokic, and will never even be close to Jokic. And two, Kevin Durant was a no-show once again. If you need to win these series, if you need to win these big games, he needs to be that guy to step up. And having 13 points and 7 rebounds and 30-plus minutes is unacceptable. You can't do that. Reed Shepard had 27 points that game. Like you said, you can't complain. You can't complain about Reed Shepard. He continues to keep improving each game. I remember that first game of the season against OKC. Mind you, this is his first time getting meaningful minutes. He was struggling in that game. But now we're 13, 15 games in, and you can see that he's improving. Yeah. So there's no excuse with that. But Jokic just came out here and just showed you, like, okay, bro, the baby Jokic thing, there's nowhere near, right? He's the best player in the world. Dominated that game, 34-11. And Jamal Murray, obviously, he's still one of the top guards in the league. Doesn't get a lot of respect, but he can still go out there and still give you 25 plus a night and 10 assists. I still think this was a bad loss, right? Aaron Gordon only played 3 minutes and got out. No Christian Brown. And, I mean, the Nuggets just showed you how good they are from the offseason moves with Cam Johnson, even though he hasn't played well. The Tim Hardaway Jr.'s, the Bruce Browns, right? They had 22 points combined just coming off the bench with those two guys. So I think that's important. I think Houston's 3-4 against 500 teams, above 500. I think they're 0-2 against the top dogs in the Western Conference. You're going to have to see one of these teams. You can't duck the smoke. You're going to see one of them. And I don't know if they're going to be ready. Unless they make a move, I don't see what move they can make. Maybe they could flip Tari Eason, because I'm going to be honest with you. Tari Eason to me is mid. Like, he can't play offense at all. Fair. Like, I watched him play offensively. He's like, doesn't do nothing out there. And then his mom's on Twitter complaining 24/7. It's like, yo, stop complaining, bro. Your son can't hit an open shot. What are you complaining about? You know what I mean? So if they can figure something out with Tari Eason and flip something to get some more guards over there, because Reed's not the problem, but they still need more guard help, right? You know what I mean? It's like it's going to take more than just one. Yeah, I mean, I think Rockets are a good team, but there's levels to this stuff, right? And there's levels. It comes levels of Jaden Daniels is right here and Dak Prescott's right here. There's levels to this stuff.
Yeah, you can't make it up.
Yeah, and that's the funny thing with Eason is that, he's for his career 36% from 3. He's shooting 51% from 3 this year before he got hurt. But the issue is, if you look at his games played, right, his rookie year 82, but since then 22, 57, only 11 games this season, and he's still going to be out for at least a while. I think he got injured maybe earlier this month, and he's supposed to be out for 4 to 6 weeks. So that means he's probably not coming back until late December, early January or something like that. But the funny thing with Murray is you could argue this year he's having a career year, because this is the most points per game he's averaged. He's averaging 23 points a game. He's averaging 7 assists. It's the most assists he's averaged. And then 39 from the field, right? Or 39 from 3. So he might actually be a guy where he's not ever been an all-star, but as you mentioned, Top Notch, he's been one of the better underrated players, right? Especially in terms of his postseason performances, right? Especially the championship year. So this could be the first year where he cracks the all-star game. There's a lot of really good guards out there, so we'll see if that works. And then with Cam Johnson, right, he had really struggled for most of the season, but in 4 out of his last 5 games, he's cracked at least 14 or more points, right, including 18 against the Grizzlies, 20 against the Kings, 14 against the Pelicans, 19 against the Bulls. So you do need him to continue to be better on the offensive end, because defensively, he can do a lot of that other stuff. But on the offensive end, you need his shot making, right? Especially with the way Michael Porter Jr. has played it. The trade honestly doesn't look as bad as I think maybe some people initially had it framed. So we'll see. I mean, they still have a lot of depth. The main issue for Denver now is the injuries, right? Because now they got 2 starters out. They're going to have them out for a while. And ideally, you need to be in a spot if you're Denver where you're in the top 3. Because if you're out of the top 3, you have to play OKC in the second round again, as opposed to playing them in the conference finals. Then that's what all the other teams that aren't OKC and Denver want. But if you're Denver, you want to try to stay in that top 3, and that's going to be a lot harder to do with the injuries. So we'll keep an eye on them and see where they're at. And then obviously with Houston, you're hoping that the other guys, their other guys come back, and then they can probably continue to pick up wins. But both teams have been regular season machines so far this season. So I'm not really worried about them from a regular season standpoint. I'm just curious to see in the playoffs what it looks like, because I do think Houston does have some good counters to go to with the size and the athleticism and the downhill play. But we even got to see Jokic and Valanciunas play together, right? Because that was something that David Adelman mentioned that he might go to, where we might see them play together. And they actually had a brief stretch where they didn't look too bad together out there. I think that would probably only work against certain teams, though, and Houston's one of them because of all the bigs. I don't think you could do that against, like an OKC. That probably wouldn't work as well, just because they play a completely different style. So, just something to watch.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So, moving on, we'll move on to a couple other teams. So we'll talk about the Minnesota Timberwolves, right? So they've kind of been struggling so far this season. They're not terrible, but so far they're 10-7. They are playing OKC as we speak, but so far this season they are 10-1 against teams below 500, and they have not won a single game against the winning team so far this season. We'll see what happens with the Oklahoma City game, but the main thing for them is to begin the season, they were really good on the offensive end, but their defense was atrocious. They were towards the bottom of the league to begin the season. It's clicked up since then, right? I believe now they're 11th in offense, so that went down. But defensive-wise, they're 10th in defense. Offensively speaking, there's a lot of good things because Jaden McDaniels, right, is having a career year where now he's figured out a lot of different aspects to his offensive game. He's shooting 45% from 3. He's averaging almost 17 a game. He's able to attack and get downhill. Everything we talked about a couple seasons ago, where we're like, if this guy can be a consistent offensive player, somewhere around 15 or so a game, that kind of raises Minnesota's ceiling potentially, because then that's a guy that you can actually turn to for offense and scoring in a way where you just didn't really have that before, outside of Ant and then Cat and then now Randall and I guess and Naz Reid as well. But then you look around, Julius Randle has also played great. There have been times where he almost feels like he's been Minnesota's best player. And then Ant obviously also is doing a really good job as well, right? He's kind of now transitioning into basically being their point guard, even though DiVincenzo plays the nominal point guard position. But, Naz Reid got off to a slow start. But outside of that, I don't know. Like, the defense has gotten better, but it's just kind of unfortunate to see how they're playing against a lot of the best teams, because they went to the conference finals in back-to-back years. And I think the team is good, but the main thing that we talked about in the offseason was, okay, you lost Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Can any of these other young guys kind of come in and replace him? The answer so far is no, not really, right? Terrence Shannon Jr. had a really solid rookie season. He's taken a step back so far this year where he just can't seem to shoot anymore. Jalen Clark, okay, right? But just okay, right? 3-and-D wing, nothing more, nothing less. He's fine. And then there's Rob Dillingham, right? Who the Wolves drafted. And I'm kind of getting worried now. He's still young, right? Obviously, he's 20, so he'll turn 21 in January, so not too long from now. But back-to-back seasons so far, I mean, this season, he's only playing 11 minutes a game, 4 points, 2 assists, shooting 38% from the field, 25% from 3, only 41% on 2s compared to 50% on 2s last year. And then I already mentioned 25% from 3. We know defensively, obviously, that he's not amazing, but the concern is the offense, because he was kind of billed as a guy who could be a scoring guard, right? Like, his passing and playmaking is fine, right? 2 assists in 10 minutes a game. That's relatively fine, considering not a whole lot of opportunities. But just in terms of him not really being a threat offensively really anywhere on the floor, that's kind of a concern for me, because ideally you would have wanted him to kind of grow into your starting point guard, right? Because they drafted him top 10 overall. They traded assets to get him. And we understand as a rookie on a contender, yeah, he probably wasn't going to play a whole lot. It was disappointing, but it is what it is. And they also had other guards. Like you had Conley, you had Ant, you had DiVincenzo, and you had Nickeil Alexander-Walker, right? Now Nickeil Alexander-Walker's gone. So that in theory should open the door for him to come in. And it's like, nope, Bones Highland was playing to begin the year over him. He doesn't play really much now. Dillingham still plays, but just not a lot. So I don't really know what you do with that. They've been in rumors. I know Michael Scotto from Hoops Hype, he linked them to Ja Morant. That doesn't mean that they're going to trade for him, but it is a name that comes up. I'd be curious what the package is. I mean, it would have to be one of their big salary guys because they don't really have any mid-tier contracts to trade. They're not going to trade Ant. I don't think they're going to trade McDaniels. So, I don't know what they're going to do there, but it's rough because even though they went to the conference finals 2 years in a row, I didn't really feel like that this team improved. So that's kind of the question where they can beat some of these other teams in the Western Conference, but they haven't done enough to me to feel like they can beat Oklahoma City. It feels like maybe Denver's passed them by as well. But what do you all think? Because they've had a couple of really ugly losses where they lost to the Suns right at the end of the game where they had the game won. Phoenix turns the ball over on the inbounds, then Ant misses 2 free throws, and then Colin Gillespie gets basically the go-ahead game winner. And then they also played the Sacramento Kings. Looked like they had that game in hand, blow that game too in overtime. So we know that they don't have a point guard, but is there anything else they can do, at least in the short term, to kind of help fix things? Or should they kind of go all in and kind of make some big move? Because this is a good team, I think, but they need to do something in order to get a little bit closer because I don't think they have enough ball handling and playmaking to be able to get past a team like Oklahoma City because it's basically Ant, Randall, and then you're kind of just hoping and praying that somebody else can do something with the ball in their hands after that.
2 words, Mike freaking Conley, bro. It's like I don't understand why he's even still in the rotation. Like I get it. Rob Dillingham may not be the guy that you want him to be at this point in his career, but I think it would be better than having Mike Conley out there, kind of just wasting away, in my opinion. I think the problem is, obviously, they don't have that PG, right? You can't really force Anthony Edwards to be that guy. You definitely can't force DiVincenzo to be that guy, right? Like, we've seen these experiments before, and it's just not going well, right? So they just don't have a table setter. They don't have a calming presence on the offensive end of the floor. So it's like, I don't really know what you do from here. I mean, like, realistically, yeah, you could go out there and try and, finagle like a LaMelo package or, a Ja Morant package, but is that super realistic? No, I think we have to kind of operate, within the bounds and restrictions that this team ultimately has upon them. So you kind of have to go with Rob Dillingham. I don't want to say like throw him to the fire, but we at least have to see what he's really got because I feel like the opportunities haven't necessarily been there, but it is kind of puzzling as to why Rob Dillingham can't really beat out Mike Conley or Bones Highland for, quality minutes on this team that clearly has no depth at the point guard position.
Yeah, now this team's cooked. They lost 3 in a row. They just lost to OKC right now. Like Khristopher said, they did not improve at all. Back-to-back years making it to the Western Conference Finals. Typically, if you're making it there, you got to make that one move to get over the hump. There's teams that overpass them, right? Look at Houston; they're definitely better than them. Denver, of course, OKC. I mean, right? Like they're cooked, and I think CBA kind of ruined them in a sense because they chose between Nickeil and Naz Reid, and Nickeil Alexander-Walker is having a career year in Atlanta right now, giving you 19 points a game and 3 rebounds and 4 assists. He's playing pretty well over there, shooting 46% from the field, and they desperately need that because obviously there's no guard help over there. And this problem is going to be there until they fix the point guard position, right? Like Mike Conley should be done after this year. Like I don't think he should play on the basketball court next season. He should just retire now, if anything, just wasting space. But Rob Dillingham, he needs to improve, man. Like that's a problem. I remember when he got drafted to Minnesota, it was like, wow, like that's a steal. Like we was looking forward to it, but this hasn't really panned out. Bones Highland is a rec player. He's not an NBA player. That dude only does trick moves and has fun, destroy you on a 5v5 court when it doesn't matter. But when it matters, he's just not a good player overall. And so it's unfortunate for this team too because when you look at it, right, Ant's doing his thing. Julius Randle's having a great year, but you said Jaden McDaniels. This is kind of, I don't want to say a breakout year, but you could tell that he's working on his game. He's improving each game, and he looks good. So your top three players are showing up, Dante and Reed, right, and Rudy Gobert. I asked a question earlier about Khristopher, like, what do you do with Rudy Gobert? And it's tough because it's like that's the only player you can really trade and flip to get somebody, but then their defense is going to be bad. So it's just like, what do you want to do? What do you want to do in this position? Hope that your guys develop, or kind of just do that move where like we might have to score 200 points, but we give up 199. So I don't know what they do in this position. I think they're early exit, first round exit. They lost to the Kings. You can't lose to the Kings. That's unacceptable. And not only did they lose to the Kings, they blew a lead to the Kings. So that was pretty bad.
Back-to-back games. Well, that they should have won, honestly.
Yeah. So yeah, this team's in a bad spot. They're in a bad spot. I mean, Anthony Edwards was just going off, but I think OKC's fine with Anthony Edwards going off. And it's kind of like the method where they do like, you can have Jokic score all you want, but I want no one else, or the opposite. Because you don't want the role players going off. That's how you get momentum and stuff. So they're fine with it, right? They're in a bad spot. I don't even think Ja and Ant would even work out, to be honest with you. That'd just be more of a social media team at this point. Ja and Ant would just be battling who got the best celebrations at this point.
Yeah, that's the tough question is like, because we talked about it with Detroit, where I mean they're in a different spot because they're in the East, but it's like the question of, do you go all in, and make the move now? Minnesota on paper is supposed to be closer than Detroit is, but you just kind of wonder, like, does it make sense to do a move like that, or do you kind of do something else? So we'll see what Minnesota does, but it's not looking too great for them. And again, especially when you can't. The good thing is that they can clearly beat the teams that they're supposed to beat, aside from the Kings. But you got to be able to do a little bit more than that. And we know in the playoffs, like, yeah, we've seen teams like the Knicks last year. They lost most of the games to all the top teams, and then in the playoffs, they were 2 wins away from a chance to the finals. So it doesn't matter quite as much as you think, but it's just you want that seeding. And we know, like in the Western Conference, a lot of these teams can beat, these other teams regardless of seeding. It's just I don't want to have to be in the play-in if I want to be able to win multiple rounds. It's just very difficult to do it from, down low. You kind of want to be able to have one of those higher seeds and kind of, just get a better matchup and then, have home court and kind of win that way. But I think that this is a team where it would not surprise me if they did something at the deadline. But like you mentioned, the CBA puts them in a tough spot because they were kind of, like you said, forced into choosing between certain guys when they probably would have just paid everybody to just keep them. And then it set them back. And they do have a trade exception because I think the Nickeil Alexander-Walker signing was like a sign and trade, and they didn't get anything back except a trade exception and a pick. So they could use that. I don't know what it would be, though. So, I'm not quite sure what the exact move is there. If it's not Ja, then it's like some, bench level point guard or like, kind of like a second string point guard. I don't know if they do that, but then is it really that much better than what you have right now? Probably not.
Can they trade Nas?
I mean, they signed him in the offseason, so that would have to be something that would be later, right? Like, I think they couldn't do it until like either December 15th or January 15th. I'm not sure which one, but like, they could, I think they could. It would just have to be later.
Because I'm trying to think, like, realistically, like, okay, if you don't want to move off Gobert, you're not moving off Ant, you're not moving off McDaniels. Who's their next best piece? It'll be Dante and Nas, right? Like, they got to figure something out, because they're just in a bad spot, to be honest.
Yeah, because if it's not Anthony Edwards or McDaniels, right, then it's got to be Randall, Gobert, or Nas Reed, or some combination of some of those other guys, because they just don't have any of the other salaries to make it work. So they would have to give up one of their core pieces, I think, in order to get it done. And I don't know how they seem like they love Nas Reed, and he can be a valuable guy as a backup big, but it's a tough spot to be in. The CBA kind of puts some of these teams in a rough spot. So we'll move on to the next group or next discussion. I guess we'll talk about Golden State, right? So they're a team that is kind of hard to figure out at times because they started the season off great. I remember when we talked about them in like the first week or so of the season. It was like 2 weeks, right? It was Kuminga playing great, where he's averaging like 17 points, getting like 8 rebounds, 5 assists, doing a little bit of everything. And we're like, wow, if you get that version of Kuminga, that could actually put Golden State, you know, in that upper tier of teams that could come out of the Western Conference. Then 2 weeks later, it doesn't work. He kind of regresses, but it's not all his fault. The team starts to lose games. Then he was coming off for now he comes off the bench. Actually, now he's hurt. But before he got hurt, he was relegated to the bench, right? It was Pods and Kuminga that were moved out of the starting unit for Will Richard, who's a rookie, and then Moses Moody, right, who was the starter last year with Pods after the Butler trade. So it's weird because when you look at their stars, they've played really well. I mean, when you look at Steph Curry, even though he's 37 years old, he's averaging 29 a game and still shooting the lights off the ball. Jimmy Butler, to be honest, has actually been really good for them so far this season. He's played almost every game. He's averaging 20 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists, doing everything for them. And then Draymond offensively has not been great, but defensively, he's still been awesome. But after that, everything else is a mixed bag, right? Because I already mentioned Kuminga started the year off well, then he kind of regressed, and then everybody else has just been inconsistent, right? Brandon Pajemski, right? Mr. Shohei Otani, um, he's been kind of inconsistent so far this year. Moses Moody has had some games where he shot the ball really well. He's probably been the most consistent, I guess. But then, do you really want him as a starter for a championship contending team? And then after that, right, Al Horford started the year off okay, but now he looks like he might be done. Now he's got sciatica, so I don't know how long he's going to be out. But that signing so far hasn't really been good. Melton's supposed to be on his way back, so we'll see if that saves them. And then after that, right, Post has been fine, but it's just kind of a lot of meh. And it matches the record, right? Where the record right now is 10-9. They're playing Houston. Houston's without Durant. I'm going to assume they'll probably win that one, but I'm not always just going to predict stuff like that. But they're not terrible. It's just I think even with the hard schedule, with all the back-to-backs that everybody's complained about if you're a Warrior fan, I still think that it's kind of been a disappointing start to the season, given the fact that they traded for Butler. They were what, 23-7 when he played last year. Then they go on the huge run. Then Steph gets hurt. They lose to Minnesota. Maybe they go to the conference finals. Then they make the additions in the offseason, although it took them forever. And I think you just thought, okay, they're going to go into the season with Butler and these guys. They're going to start off better. And they just haven't been able to build any consistency. On the offensive end, they're basically a bottom 10 team. It may have changed a little bit because they blew out Utah the last game they played, but offensive rating, they're 22nd. Defensive rating wise, they're ninth. So they've been pretty good on the defensive end. But in terms of the offense, it's just brutal. Like when Steph is off the floor, even when you have those other guys, it just hasn't really worked out because you just don't know what you're going to get from any of these other guys on the offensive end. The bigs, because they haven't really been that great, they're playing super small. So this was kind of one of those teams where we knew going into the season you were going to have to make a trade. Obviously, you circle Kuminga with a big circle there because that's the guy where they gave him that contract, kind of like Jalen Green, presumably to trade him. But what's the trade? I don't know what the trade is. We talked about it when he first signed that deal. It's not that easy to just come up with an obvious trade for Kuminga, right? People have mentioned like Trey Murphy or Herb Jones. I don't know if that's going to get it done because I don't know what New Orleans is looking for. Do they even want to do anything because they don't have their pick? So they have to do something. I think the main thing is some of these other guys are just going to have to play a little bit better, be a little bit more consistent on the offensive end, because that's really what you're missing. Because you have your vets and they're on the older side of things, but your hope is that you have these young players that can kind of get you through the full 82. And so far, they really haven't been able to do that with any level of consistency. The schedule will get easier, so they'll win more games at some point. But I've been kind of disappointed so far in what I've seen from them because even like with the tough schedule, I think the record should be better than what it was because every team can say they've bungled some games, but just as a whole, I think if you looked at the first 20 games and they're basically, let's say they beat Houston and they're 11-9, right? Regardless, like that's basically 500. I think that'd be kind of disappointing because you're in the play-in right now, and we've seen them be able to come out of it as a lower seed and win. But the whole point of this season is, all right, we have enough so that now we don't have to be a play-in team. And right now they're in the play-in. And it's not completely solidified. They're not that far behind some of these other teams. It's like a game or so. And Minnesota just lost, so it'll be even closer. But you just don't really want to be in that spot because it's just so difficult. Especially again, we'll see what happens, but you may have the lucky scenario where Denver's not the 2 seed, and then you don't have to play them. Because if that was the scenario, then you'd be done, regardless of which play-in spot. But they have to do something because right now I don't think this team is good enough, in my opinion.
Yeah, this is kind of the logic as to why I picked the under for this team going into the season. I thought that they had a good offseason in terms of bringing in, certain guys, the strengths and numbers, philosophy for this team, whatever the case may be. But at the end of the day, you look at the roster now and it's like, okay, these guys aren't really performing, to the best of their ability, right? The inconsistencies are a little bit too much. Like you said, Steph's been balling, Jimmy as well. Like those two guys are having great seasons, but where's the help elsewhere? You're not really getting it from anywhere else, right? And I think, game in, night out, it's just been really rough. You don't really have any big man depth. You don't have any depth, coming off the bench. Like you have Buddy Hield who might drop an occasional, like, I don't know, like 20 points randomly, but is that really enough to translate to the win column? Absolutely not. And that's exactly why the record is what it is. So, kind of expected, not really surprising, but they did have an interesting start to the season, like you talked about with Kuminga, but it definitely didn't last very long, and I think that's exactly why I picked the under.
Yeah, I mean, dude, this Warriors team is like if it reminds me of the Clippers in a sense, like where it's like James Harden or nothing. This is Steph Curry or nothing. I'm glad the Miami Heat moved off from Jimmy Butler, because we're just a better team without him, and the Warriors are going to be a playing team, and Jimmy and Draymond are already throwing shots at each other. Love to see it. Break that team up. But to talk about like trade ideas. I do think this happens. I think they're going to do a JK trade for Sabonis. I think it's going to be involved in that. I think Sabonis has to go and stay at the deadline. Sabonis does not want to play for Sacramento at all. He been injured all year, but he pretty much says, "Listen, I don't like my role here." And Kuminga to the Kings makes more sense for them because they're just building. They're trying to build a young core over there, and I think Kuminga can ball over there with no expectations or anything like that. It's an ugly fit, but I think Warriors need to make a type move like that. They're gonna play small, have Dre at the 4, Sabonis at the 5, run with Jimmy and Steph, and see what you can do. Because they're in their final stretch. I know for sure. Even though Curry can ball to wherever, but they're not going to be playing for too long, right? This is an old team, and they're not going to be able to compete with these young cats like the Rockets, like the Houston Rockets. Like they're coming to take over this league. Um, the younger teams, I will say, because if you see the top dogs in each conference, they're all young teams. Look at the Detroit Pistons, even look at the Toronto Raptors, look at Oklahoma City Thunder, right? The Miami Heat are a fairly young team, even though they're East and West, but the young teams are pretty much taking over, fresher legs, and the older teams are kind of falling apart a little bit. When you look at the Clippers, you look at Golden State, stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, I think they're gonna thug the season out, but I will give them confidence though. Like they go in a playoff series, like playoff Dre, playoff Curry, like it's still a tough out no matter what. Like they're still gonna be topped up. Like that's a scary matchup. Like you just don't want to see those guys, right? But their rotational players just are not stepping up. It's simple as that. So I do expect Kuminga to be traded. I think that's just a toxic relationship that needs to be broken up, but they continue to keep getting back together because don't tell me why. I don't know. Reminds me of just a relationship. They don't like each other. Steve Kerr and Kuminga don't have the best relationship, and it's just that, right? They use him as the scapegoat all the time, and it's pathetic.
Yeah, and that's kind of and you mentioned the Sabonis deal, right? And that's kind of been, sort of a ongoing discussion now, like in terms of like something that people have come up with, where it could be like Kaminga, Moses Moody, Buddy Hield for Sabonis, right? And that could give them a different look where, yeah, you got a center who can get downhill, can pass the ball, who can rebound. He's not played that great this year, but it is a different team. I see Yarby nodding his head, so that means he clearly thinks that this is a great trade. But what do you
You already know where I stand on Sabonis. That's the problem. I think he's overrated. I don't think he's that good. I would use language, but we're on podcast, so it's like he sucks in my opinion. And that's just me being nice.
Well,
Yeah, and I think
Go ahead.
Mhm.
I do
Yeah,
think he's. I don't think he's the greatest, right? But what I will say is his best season was with De'Aaron Fox when he was running those pick and rolls, and I think Steph Curry and Sabonis they can run that pretty well, right? Like Sabonis can set a bunch of screens for Curry, they hand off. Sabonis can go to work too. So I think there's something in that can work, right?
Mhm.
But when I tell you this, right, watching Sabonis play this year, Yarby, man, oh man, dude, anybody that tried to say he's better than a lot of these centers in the league, he is not.
Exactly. Thank
He
you.
is one
Thank you.
dimension.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that like, yeah, if you're one of those upper tier guys, like it shouldn't matter quite as much the personnel. We understand as a center, right? You have to be set up and play alongside another guard, even like a Jokic. He's got Jamal Murray, but just as a whole, like the drop off efficiency wise has been pretty rough. He's not like much of an outside shooter, anyways. But even in the paint, right? He's shooting 56% on twos, a little bit lower than what it was last year at 63. And then what was it, the All-Star year for the Kings? He was shooting over 60% on twos as well. So, and then even like 38, 40% from three. So it would be interesting. It's just a matter of, I guess, what are their alternatives in terms of centers? Like Al Horford, Quentin Post, Draymond at the five. Like,
Dude, it's
what do you
bad.
have to lose at this point? It's just the thing is that whatever the move is that if you get Sabonis, then that's it. You can't really do any other moves after that. So then if that doesn't work, I'm not saying it won't, we don't know. But if that doesn't work, then that's the team that you're gonna have until those guys, are done. So and then after that post stuff, it's gonna be pretty ugly. So
Let's not forget Draymond Green said them to not trade for Laurie Marketing because he said he didn't like the fit. Which, dude, Draymond Green has too much power because I'll be honest with you, I think Laurie Marketing will actually help his team out right now drastically, right? A 7 foot that can give you 30 plus points a night. Draymond kind of screwed his team in a way, to be honest with you.
and that's the question where it's the matter of, I guess they didn't like the offer for marketing, right? Wasn't it? It was like they didn't want to give up pods, and I think their final offer was just like Moses Moody and picks, right? Because back then marketing's contract was a lot smaller. But now if you were to get marketing, you would have to give up Draymond, and they're not doing that. So I don't
Dude,
know.
give up pods. I don't know what's the hype about pods. Like, I really don't know what's the hype about pods.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Dude, pods is like, dude, every time when they need him to score, the dude's 6 for 19, 8 for 20, 10 for 30. He's not that good what people think he is, bro. And then I hear these quotes, oh, it's gonna be my team when Steph Curry retires. Well, if it's gonna be your team, you're gonna get the number one pick every single year.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. When he was in college or whatever, and we did our mock drafts, like we literally had a mock going right to the Warriors because he is very much a Warriors type player. He does a lot of the little things, but I think his ceiling is lower than I think what a lot of people probably thought. And I didn't really expect him to be a star, anyways. But I think there were a lot of people who were based off of how he played as a rookie. I think the expectation was, oh, he could even be like an Austin Reeves type player. I don't think he has like quite as much craft, quite as much shiftiness with the ball,
None.
right? So I think that's yeah. So I think that's kind of a limiting factor. But I mean, he's not the worst. It's just if you're going to rely on him as one of your key pieces on your team, that's kind of why you're in the spot where it's like, yeah, let's just go out and get Sabonis or somebody like that. Are there any other bigs that they could potentially get that aren't Sabonis? Like, could you go after like a Gafford? I know the spacing with Draymond and Butler wouldn't necessarily be that great. Could they go after a Claxton, or are those just not Warriors type players?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if those guys would work. I mean, like in theory, yeah, it'd be nice to have like a really good, I guess, lob threat. But if you're
Yeah,
gonna go the
trade back.
center route, you might as well just go Sabonis. Me personally, I'm not a fan of it just because of where I stand on the guy. I've been saying he's been overrated for like 3 years straight. But regardless, like I if he's best available, you gotta kind of pull the trigger on that one. Am I tripping?
No,
Yeah,
you
I mean
got
that's yeah. If the value is low, then that's you almost kind of have to because Kaminga, that's not going to work come playoff time because the relationship just isn't there. Like, yeah, he played well in the Wolves series, but that was when Steph was out and you didn't really have anyone else to turn to. I don't think that's going to be his role in a serious playoff outing. It's not that he's a horrible player; it's just not a good fit, and the role consistently changes, and it's just not going to work with that group. So you might as well pull the plug. It's just you can't do it until January 15th, right? That's the date where Kaminga watch begins in terms of him actually finally getting traded. So they're gonna have to just hold on and see if they can win enough, as many games as they can until that point. So I think the hope is you can bounce back, and then by the time it's close to the trade deadline, you're, maybe a top 6 seed as opposed to, lower seed. Where do you think they finish? Like, do you all think that they're going to finish in the play-in, or do you think that they can get back into the top 6? Because I think with the easier schedule, it's doable. They're just going to have to beat out some of these other teams.
I mean, I picked the under, so I'd probably have to go with the play-in.
No, I think they're easily a playing team. Because the thing about them is Jimmy Butler's going to miss a couple more games because this is what Jimmy Butler loves to do is miss a couple games. Because he's a selfish player. Um, Steph Curry might deal with an ankle injury, right? Those things still happen. He might miss a week or so, which is unfortunate because if Steph goes down, this team's really bad. There's going to be one of those injuries. It just happens, right? You don't want injuries to happen, but it just happens. So they're a playing team. They're going to find a way to get in. Because the big question is, like, does Phoenix continue to keep playing this well, right? They're top 6. And then Minnesota's kind of falling off a little bit right now, but I think they'll be in that like 7-8 range, and then they're gonna play the Thunder or the Lakers or Nuggets, and they get swept.
Yeah, that's kind of the question because right now because you have OKC, you got LA, Denver, Houston. Those are probably your top 4. It could change, right? Just because of injuries or schedule or whatever. Then you have the Spurs and the Suns, but the Spurs have been able to win some games even with the injuries that they've had. Wemby's still going to be out for a minute, but Harper's coming back, so that should help. Fox has been playing really well. Then you have the Suns, right? At some point, I guess we'll have to talk about them at some point, where they've just been balling 8-2 in their last 10. They're playing the Kings right now as we speak, and it's an annihilation so far from what I've seen. But just either way, it's 46-23. It was like 41-16 at the end of the first. So it'll be tough. It's going to come down to that last month, right? If that last month comes down to like a couple of games and they get Sabonis or somebody that can help them, then they should get in. But if they're still in that like 8 spot and some of these other teams are a little bit more solidified, it's going to be tough. So I'll say right now, I'll say play in, but I think they might be 7. I don't think they'll be 8 because I think they can win whatever play-in game that they play. But in fairness, I picked the over on them. So in theory, they should be top 6. But I just think they've been a little underwhelming so far. But I do think after they won't have as many back-to-backs and the schedule will ease up, I think they'll look better anyways. But they still need some upgrades if they want to be a serious contender. So now I guess we'll kind of look at this last team. Guess we'll talk about them, the Miami Heat. Right? They've won 6 in a row, 13-6. Basically sitting in the top 3 spot in the Eastern Conference. So I guess, top notch, this is your team. So we'll kind of let you lead this conversation and talk about what you've seen from the Miami Heat so far and, how excited you are now that, they've gotten Herro back and, everything else. What do you think?
We're going to the championship this year, man. Listen, bro, we got a squad. Right? Like first thing first, right? 13-6, 9-1 at home, right? 8-2 in their last 10. And I think the most impressive part about it is that Tyler been out for a while, has only played 2 games. Norman been out for a while. Not a while, but he was dealing with that groin injury. Bam was out with a toe injury, right? So all our top 3 guys, even Wiggins was out. So our top 4 guys were out due to injury, and it didn't really matter. It just shows you how deep this team is, right? Paolo Larsons are stepping up. Simone Fontecchio coming off the bench, being one of the better shooters. Drew Smith's. Jaime's having his best year. He's going to win the 6th man of the year easily this year. I mean, this team is just stepping up, right? Like all the young guys that I had question of like, can they be somebody for us? And they are. Besides Nikola Jovic, who is garbage, get him off my team. But we have one of the better benches in the NBA. Our starting lineup is fluent, right? Davion Mitchell is a pit bull out there, one of the better playmakers, getting only better. Can create his own shot, get buckets too. And then when you have a player in Norman Powell, who easily should be an all-star this year, if he's qualified, I feel like last year he could have, right, due to injuries, but it's the West, so it's a little tougher. But with the East, I think his opportunity. And then obviously Khalil Weir's having his breakout season where, it's funny, me and Yarby had a conversation, who's better, Sar or Khalil Weir? So I'm interested to see what you guys' opinions on that. Who I'm rolling with. He's just a dominant piece, right? Spo continues to keep pushing him, and he's listening, right? When you have a team of Spo and then also Udonis has him in your ear, these players and coaches have won championships, so they know how to get the best out of people. And so you love to see that type of stuff. And now that we got our team fully healthy, I do think there's some clunky stuff right now with Tyler and Norm, and I think they got to figure a way to stagger their minutes. But we have the pieces. Not like we got to go out there and make a big trade to improve this team. We already got the pieces, right? Like I think if we make a move, would be for another backup big because we are a little bit smaller. We do get destroyed on the board count, which today we did see a little bit. Miles Turner been awful all year, but he had his best game this season against the Heat with 25 plus points, which we haven't seen that since forever. But I'm proud of this group, right? Current defensive rating, like we're top 5 in that. Top benches in the league. Offensively, like we're scoring 140 plus points pretty much every single night outside of the last 2 games. And the funny thing about it is like these games we're playing bad. The last 2 we played Dallas and we played Milwaukee. We've been playing bad. Last season, the season before that, we'll find a way to lose those games. This year, we're finding a way to win those games, and so that's how you can tell that's a good team. Even bad wins, well, nothing's a bad win, but like a sloppy win, you find a way to always win. So that makes you a good team. And so looking forward to it. We play Detroit this Saturday, the 2 top dogs in the Eastern Conference, and I think that's going to be a battle. 2 fun teams, 2 young teams. So yeah, man, I'm proud of this group.
Yeah, and that's kind of the cool thing about, the Heat so far is, the offense, in terms of the change in the offensive structure, right? Where it's like no pick and rolls and, none of these other things. And it's just, it's just, guys being able to get downhill, play loose and free. And it's a really fun style of offense, right? A lot different from some of the Heat teams in previous years where it was kind of more of a grit and grind fest on the offensive end. And everything kind of felt really difficult in terms of the offense. I mean, you had Butler as a shot maker, but just a different type of offense this year. And like you said, just total buy-in from everybody, right? Getting Norman Powell for free. Of course, that's amazing, right? Just in terms of what was it? It was like Kevin Love and Kyle Anderson. So you got him for free essentially. And now, Hero's back and, he should be able to fit in. Do you think that Hero is going to be able to easily adjust to this offense, right? Because it seems like, it's a different type of offense.
Um, I think he will be able to, but I do think it's funny because ever since he has came back, it has been low scoring games, which is kind of concerning, right? Because this is a high scoring team lately, um, but we're scoring low hundreds, and that's giving me a little nervous, man. Because back last year, that's what we was getting. We were scoring 100 points, which is typically very low in nowadays of this era. Teams are scoring 100 points in 3 quarters, right? And so you're playing better defenses, and that's fine. But I think time will tell. But I think Spo is one of the better coaches, so he's gonna like continue to keep staggering those minutes down the stretch. He took Norman out, put Tyler back in, and vice versa and stuff like that. I do think Tyler's playing like an all-star once again, right? To miss all those weeks and come back and be this efficient. I mean, dude, he has 24 points in his first game, 12 for 18. He missed the first 4 shots in the first quarter and only missed 2 shots the rest of the game, which is pretty damn good, right? And then today against Milwaukee, 29 points, 9 for 15, 3 for 5, 7 assists, 5 rebounds. That's pretty impressive for a guy that missed a couple weeks. So, averaging 27 points a game this year. And another thing I do like about it too is that he's improving his defense. One thing about Tyler Herro, he's more known as a scorer, but if you can kind of put him into that 2-way guard, like Darius Garland called him out, which pissed me off. I hate that comment. I remember in the postseason. Those things you take personal. You really do. Like we're gonna go attack him, and so if he can continue to keep improving that, I think he's just gonna be a better player. And then maybe he'll be worth his extension because I'm at the point where I don't know if I want to pay him $40 to $45 million because we still got to pay Norman. Or are we letting Norman walk? So it's just a big conversation. But 2 games in, we are 2-0 with him, but stuff has looked a little bit different, but we're still winning.
Yeah, I mean, this team is actually one of the more exciting teams to watch in the league. I think, like you guys talked about the pace, the difference in the offense, it's phenomenal too, right? And like I think the resurgence of guys like Jaquez, I feel like he had a weird season last year, but this season he's actually been hooping in my opinion. So him coming off the bench and helping, bolster up the bench depth, I think that helps out a lot. And I feel like everybody's role is clearly defined on this team, whereas last year there were kind of like moments where you didn't really know what the heck was going on. Things were slow, like you said. Really like I don't know. It felt a little bit more methodical, but overthinking kind of vibe. I don't know from last year, but this year everybody's kind of playing. They're having fun as well, which is cool as well. So shout out to Miami Heat. definitely are like top 2 in the Eastern Conference right now.
Yarby, you know why? Because
Yo,
we had a toxic player on our team, and Jimmy Butler, who ruined the whole vibe and who ruined the
exactly.
whole energy for this team.
Yeah.
And even Jovic said it this offseason. He goes, "We feel like a family." He
Yeah.
says we feel together, right? Because last year was just so messy, and like players are just like us. They're normal. They have emotions and feelings and stuff like that. So when you're giving up on your teammates, it's pathetic, right? And and you could tell Bam and Jimmy don't have the best relationship either. And Tyler and Jimmy don't have the best relationship. I actually have some big T on that. Can't talk about it on live, but dude, it's just like they play as a group. If you look at OKC, last thing I'll say, when you look at OKC, they're a big family.
For
That's
sure.
why they're one of the best teams. They have a great relationship off the court and on the court. I play basketball now. Like I have a great relationship with my players, but on and off the court. So it only makes us better. It makes us closer, right? When you don't have the best relationship, and you can even be at work, right? You have a good work relationship with somebody. You don't want to screw them over, right?
Right.
That's my fan. That's my dog. Like I want to,
For sure.
help them out and stuff like that. So that's kind of how I look at it. So they're playing like a fun unit. They like each other, and no more. Oh, this is my team and this and that. No, it doesn't matter. They just want to find a way to win.
Yeah, hooping.
Yeah, second in defensive rating. So they got one of the best defenses in the league, right? Offense is down to 15. That might change after, that Bucks game. But like you said, it's only been a couple of games, reintegrating Hero. So that could change. I expect it to probably be better. What do you think do you think they do anything at the deadline, or do you think that they just kind of ride it out and just kind of see, where this goes?
To be honest with you, I'm kind of stuck right now. Like they went after Precious Achua because we don't have the size, but then they released him because of the CBA. I think they stand still. I think they like what they see. Now, if an injury does happen, I do think they're mainly on, okay, we like what we got in town, like what in our team, right? Overall, like Kashad Johnson's. A lot of people may not know who Kashad Johnson is, but he cracks. He's not cracking the rotation, but if an injury does happen, he's playing, and he gave us 14 points and 12 rebounds the first game he played, right? So like they're comfortable with their unit. So I don't think they do. If they do to make a move, it might be a bio market move, or they stand still because I think their goal is to free as much cap space for 26, 27 free agency and clear the books.
Yeah, and that's something that a lot of teams have kind of hinted at that they're going to probably do, and that might dictate what some of these teams do either at the deadline or in the summer, because we've heard a lot about, some of these teams where they're going to be chasing after these max free agents in 2027, right? Like whether or not it's like a Jokic or a Giannis or anybody in that caliber. So that's going to be something to watch for as we get closer to, like I said, the deadline in the summer, because that's gonna determine where some of these teams go, combined with the CBA. But do I expect Jokic to leave? Probably not. Giannis, yeah, I feel like that's a guy that's probably gone once the
Oh, he's
season's
gone.
over.
He's
Yeah,
gone. He's watching his team right now not win one game without him. He's gone.
yeah. So, yeah, and that's why teams are gonna keep their options open, for these next couple of summers as the guy like that is available, because he could be somebody where if you can get him and you don't have to give up a ton, that could change the ceiling for your team. Just because he's one of the best players in the league, along with some of these other people that might be in free agency. I guess one last thing, just to kind of just throw this out there, just because he's a name that hasn't really been mentioned a whole lot. Let's say if you're a team that's kind of maybe looking to make an upgrade, or just you need another guy, would you go after a Michael Porter Jr.? Because that's a guy where he's been playing really well for the Nets, pretty much having a career year, at least offensively. I know they're a horrible team, but just in terms of the numbers he's putting up, like say if you're Detroit, right, and say you're like, we don't want Lauri Markkanen, but maybe Michael Porter Jr. is like a cheaper option. Would you go after that, or would you just kind of just have him just stay in Brooklyn? Because he could be a guy that might have played his way into a deadline trade. And if you're Brooklyn, there's no point in keeping him because, I mean, he could basically just randomly win you a game, on any given night if he gets hot.
I feel like he stays put. I don't know though. I could be completely wrong. I don't know if there's like a legit market for him. I feel like we might have to wait and see on that. But yeah, he's been hooping. He's been balling like night in, night out. He's giving you, crazy numbers and exploding for all these random, high scoring games. So, and I think we kind of expected that just because of the volume, shooter that, he can be and was in college, high school. Like if you followed his career, that's just kind of not really unexpected. It's just, a little bit of a different role than what was, what he was playing in Denver. So, I mean, I get it.
No, I think this is just all the this is typical Brooklyn, right? We seen what Michael Porter Jr. is about in the playoffs. If Jokic can't make you look good, buddy, ain't nobody else making you look good, right? He struggled in the postseason, and I'm not even going to talk about last postseason, right? He was injured. I'm gonna give him that excuse, but we've seen previous postseasons where he just wasn't playing his best. He's a terrible defender. The offenses expose him. In those big moments, they go after him. In Brooklyn, there's no expectations. You could take 50 shots, and ain't nobody gonna say nothing, right? He could take those contested 3-pointers. Ain't nobody gonna say nothing. I personally think Brooklyn should keep him because I think Yarby brought this up maybe last podcast. You got to have vets on your team. I think it was about your Wizards. You said they don't have enough vets or something like that.
Yeah.
And Michael Porter Jr., Claxton, I feel like you keep those two pieces. Those are your vet pieces. And you kind of do what Utah is doing in the sense like you're going to keep these guys as long as possible, but you're still building up your young core. And I think that's what you do with Porter and Claxton. And try to hopefully get your young guys going because I mean, dude, if you miss out on 5 first-round picks, then you're just terrible at drafting, right?
Agreed.
So I think you keep them. I think you keep them unless they're out there giving you 3 first-round picks, you ship them off, right? But if they're not even doing that and they're just giving you 1 first-round pick, I think you just keep Porter. I don't even think you trade him for 1 first, maybe 2. You get into okay, we can have negotiations with 2, but you just keep him. I think Michael Porter Jr. is having fun right now. I really do. Like even though he's losing. He's in New York. This dude's on the most podcasts I ever seen him ever been in since he was, you know what I mean? Like he's just living life. He's freely. He's on streams.
Yeah.
I ain't never seen him on a stream when he was on Denver.
Seriously.
Dude wants to be in Colorado.
Yeah. Right.
You know what I mean? Like
right. It's a whole different market. He's happy. He has no expectations. He already got a ring. So come on now.
And he got paid. So bro, if you think about it, and this is like you're a basketball player, you want to keep winning, but he got his money, he got his championship. Now he's having fun. He's in New York. He's chilling.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's kind of the question where, as we get closer to the deadline, and we'll talk about this as we get closer to the deadline, but has been a lot of talk, right? From people like Mark Stein and others about all these centers and all these other players that could be available, in the trade market. So, hopefully we'll see some moves, right? Because you never know. We don't really want a trade deadline that's completely dry, but that's just kind of where we're at as of right now. So now I guess we'll close it out and kind of do what we normally do, where we look at these polls. And so in our last post, right, on our IG, we pretty much asked we asked the question about the Clippers, and we asked, will the Clippers make the playoffs? So with all of our responses, so we got 45%. So this changed since the last time I looked at it. 45% said yes. Then 25% said no. And then 30% said no, and OKC gets a top 3 pick. So it seems like most people still believe that the Clippers can make the playoffs. And I guess that must just have to do with the standings. And I guess, they could, still get into the top 10. And if you get in the top 10, you have a chance to be, in amongst the final 8.
Yeah, because what are they? They're like 11th right
5
now.
and 13.
Yeah.
5 and 13, 13th in the Western Conference after the loss the other night to the Lakers.
I don't think they make the playoffs. Even if they do, automatic first round exit. I don't even need to rehash what we talked about like in the short or the episode, right? Like the team is just not good, straight up, and everybody's sick and tired of it.
They're not making the playoffs. I don't even got to say much about this team.
Like, come on. What were we talking about?
Yeah. Then we got a few comments to read, also from the IG. So Zay_Conley7, 55 points, 10 3-point makes. That's a reference to James Harden's 55-point game against the Charlotte Hornets. So that's pretty cool.
Hooping.
I guess
Hooping.
Low spots for them.
He's been hooping every night.
Yeah. Then Saxo.Mac2010, trade Harden for a second-round pick to Houston, please.
I mean, in theory, yeah, but I mean that's not gonna happen. But yeah, it'd be great for.
But I guess also if you're the Clippers, why would you only be okay with getting a second-round pick?
Yeah.
Also, can you even do that? Like, can you actually do that move?
No,
because Houston's a first apron team, I think so.
Yeah.
They can't take back more salary than they send out, so they would have to send a crazy amount of salary.
Yep.
Because what is Harden at? He's at like at least $40 million, right?
Yep.
So I don't even know what would the package even be. That would have to be like some of the guys they signed in the offseason. Like it would have to be like Van Vliet. It'd have to be like Dorian Finney-Smith and maybe a couple of young guys. I don't even know if they can get there.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be
And then
disgusting.
Final comment from Playboy Steven CP. They are a top 3 team in the NBA.
Yeah, I'm not entertaining that one. You can't be serious.
I don't know.
Wait, who's the top 3 team?
The Clippers.
Clippers. These are all comments from our Clippers short.
Yeah, I don't know. That was crazy. What are we talking about?
I don't know. Maybe they thought we meant another team. I don't know.
For real.
Or maybe they mean like top 3 team. I don't know. Maybe it's like opposite day or something. I don't know.
Nah.
Yeah, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. But that pretty much concludes today's episode of Off Ball Takes. Again, if you want to join in on these surveys and these polls and comments, of course, go to @the OBT podcast for more content and updates, and also continue to like and subscribe to help the channel grow, because we've gotten several subscribers now as of late, and we're continuing to grow. We're getting closer and closer to our target, so help us out. We really appreciate it. But that concludes today's episode. Thanks for watching. See you next time.